LG TV 55LE5400 had the same issue as many of you had, where it just went to the LG screen and wouldn't come off. Looking on YouTube, I learned what everyone else did, and I was able to fix mine, at least temporarily, and I wanted to share a couple pointers to build on what I have learned. First of all, when you take it apart, if you've taken apart an iPhone, it's the same issue. You got to keep all your screws and fasteners separated, so just be careful of that. There's a lot of screws to take care of. I chose not to put my board in the oven. There was a couple other guys that used a heat gun, and that was the approach that I took. If you do that, you need to take the board off. You also need to remove the heat sinks, which honestly is probably the hardest part of this. You need a pair of pliers. They're push-in spring-loaded fasteners. You got to squeeze the back and kind of force them back out. But when you do that, what you'll find, there's a heat sink on this one and a heat sink here. What I found was there's a piece of heat sink tape, and it had started to degrade. This small one still has it on. You can see it's kind of flaking off. So I'm guessing that might be part of my problem. I used a industrial heat gun, not a hair dryer, and I went about it very conservatively. I first made a template to cover everything else and just expose these two chips. It took me 3 times of heating. Again, I went conservative, but for the time that it takes to reattach 5 cables and put a couple screws in the board to hold it, and then try and see if it works, it's worth taking the extra effort, going slow with the heating. My 3rd time through, what I ended up doing is just going a little bit longer in length. So I flipped the board upside down, did a cursory back and forth. Again, I was using an industrial gun, which is, I don't know the temperature, but it gets hot. So I was 6 to 8 inches away. Went over it probably about 8 seconds. Honestly, I don't think that's what fixed it. I flipped the board back over. I concentrated my heat on this chip for about 5 or 6 seconds. This one for 5 or 6. Did a cursory over, and then went back and hit this one again and here. Again, go slow. You'll melt stuff if you go too long. So that's what I did, and it worked. The next thing I did is I bought some replacement heat sink tape off of Amazon. I went with the thick stuff. You can buy different thicknesses. This is actually 2 millimeter. Because when I took my board off, it seemed to me that it had kind of bowed in this direction, and because it was degrading, I'm wondering if I wasn't having good contact with my heat sink, and that's what ultimately caused my problem. I really don't know. It seems counterintuitive to me that adding heat actually fixes the problem, and I have no idea if this is a long-term solution or not. I was out of alternatives. Replacement boards are too much money for me to spend on a 7-year-old TV. If it was 50 or 100 bucks, I'd try it, but I'm not going to spend 3 or 4 times that to get a replacement board. So that's my plan. I'm ready to put it back together. The other thing I did buy for like $6 is a USB fan. I'm just going to plug that into one of my USB ports and mount that in the back and see if that helps. But I'll do another video in a month or 2 and let you know if it's still working.